Hello everyone, welcome to the Graduate and Professional School Series today. We'll be getting started shortly. Thank you for those of us who are joining today for the Graduate and Professional School Series. We're going to go over a few housekeeping items first. With today's webinar, just to let you know that we are being recorded. We actually record this and post this on various locations of the Stuckert Career Center, social media, and Facebook pages. All participants who are coming in will be muted upon entry. We invite you to put comments in our chat box, and we'll get to those throughout the presentation or at the end. In addition, we are so excited to have you part of this particular series today, but please know we have additional resources located at the Stuckert Career Center. So without further ado, let's get started for today. My name is Beth Hanneman, and I'm one of the assistant directors here at the Stuckert Career Center at the University of Kentucky. I can't lie to you, one of the perks of my job is getting to help pre-professional students figure out where they want to go to additional schools, maybe potentially work on your application, and actually help you through that particular process to achieving your goal and dream. Today's focus is going to be on pre-med, what that looks like in terms of applying, kind of timeline of what that would look like for you. In addition, kind of information and resources and tips that will be helpful for you as well. So let's get started. The first thing I always like to begin with is what's your why? And the reason for that is you want to make sure that you know why you're going to medical school. You don't want to be going because your mom says or your friend, aunt, and uncle. It's one of those things that you want to make sure that you have your reason for it. And it has to be more than you just want to help people. The reality is I hope every person in the world wants to help other people. But you want to do a deeper dive. Are you doing it because you have a passion for science? Are you doing it because you really like the idea of interacting with patients? Or maybe you have an area specialty that you're working with. Maybe it's peds, maybe it's going to be oncology. Whatever that is, we're here to kind of help you dive into that. What's also important of knowing your why is helping them understand maybe why you chose different organization, groups, or even classes along the way. Why we begin with the Iceberg Illusion is this. I get so many students that come into my office and we meet or I chat with them in terms of a presentation and they're like, Beth, everybody's doing this. And the reality is that maybe, maybe not, but all we really see is the success. We just see the top of that iceberg. What you don't see is the many hours that people put in to get that A in Chem 105, or maybe the hard work that they're doing in terms of maybe not going out with friends, instead studying for the MCAT. Developing the good habits, realizing there's going to be moments that you don't necessarily get that perfect grade and what that looks like. And so I want people to understand that no matter what goal you choose, that everything is going to be kind of that illusion. What people see is usually just the success versus the perseverance, the element of saying, hey, I may not have done as well as I wanted on this, but how do I recover from this? How do I grow and develop? And that's going to be important. The reason for that is they want to know, are you determined? Are you going to discourage after having a bad day, or maybe a particular situation with the patient doesn't go well? So what I want people to understand is that it's the stuff under the water that really makes and grows who you are as a person and character, and that's what they're looking for. So what to expect each year? The reason why we're covering this is this webinar is available for all University of Kentucky students, as well as other people outside that might be alumni looking to go on, or maybe you're potentially a prospective student looking at the University of Kentucky. But we wanted to make sure that we kind of talk about what to expect each year in terms of kind of the process. So if you are a freshman here at UK, welcome. We're so glad to have you as a Wildcat. Each year is going to be slightly different. For freshman year, the biggest thing I want people to focus on is their academics. I know that may sound as fun or as flashy, but the reality is that we can get you more experience of shadowing or volunteering, but I can't go back in time and get you that A in a class. So that freshman year is really about that foundation of really getting a good element of knowing where you are for your study habits, academic kind of focus. So it's helpful to meet not only with your academic advisor, but one of our pre-professional advisors like myself. As we move on to your sophomore year, what you want to do is kind of develop a plan of what looks like professionally for you. Now, if someone is applying to a certain med school compared to another, there might be different requirements. So that's important to kind of have that plan to kind of discuss what you're aiming for or doing. You want you to start thinking about kind of extracurricular activities that you might really want to get involved with. Different from high school is you're not looking to get involved in everything. You're looking to kind of pick and choose and do more of a deep dive. I grew up in a small farm town, and so if we weren't involved in everything in high school, we didn't have that organization. But college is a little bit different, and medical schools are looking for you to kind of have that longevity and kind of that commitment. It's showing that particular element that that's something that you really are passionate about. It's okay if you don't know what that is yet. That's what we're here for, to listen, maybe explore what that could be, and offer suggestions of maybe things that would be interesting for you to get involved with. As you move into your junior year, you're going to be finishing up your prereqs that you have for medical school. You're actually going to study and take the MCAT, and then you're going to start thinking about who you're going to ask for letters of recommendation. Now, as your freshman year, you're really going to build that foundation, starting and practicing getting to know professionals, but you're not going to ask them for letters of recommendation until your junior year or when you're starting to apply. But it is important to kind of build that kind of groundwork ahead of time for them to kind of get to know you. And then senior year, we're going to do interviews when it comes to the respective schools that you applied to and get invited to. And then of course, graduate from your undergraduate degree and then go on to medical school. So I can't stress this enough. I really get a lot of students that want to do that deep dive and get involved with everything right away. And these are really the two things that freshmen really need to be thinking about. GPA, I can't stress that enough. Again, when you think about the helping professions and wanting to go into pre-professional area, especially pre-med, we want to be people that want to be doers. We want to help, we want to assist, which is wonderful and great, but you really have to have that academic foundation. And so really think about getting GPA strong and building those relationships, kind of finding that tribe your freshman year. And start thinking about those freshman classes of getting to know your professors. Why I say that? Because it's a great way to kind of practice and get to know them. So when you actually kind of get to those tougher level, maybe science classes or courses or upper division ones, you kind of know what it's like to kind of make an interaction and a relationship with a faculty member. And in some cases, I have students that actually have someone who they had their freshman year still write letters of recommendation because they build such a great rapport with them. So your apple pie. You're probably wondering, why am I putting a photo of an apple pie in this presentation? Well, many students who know me know about my lovely apple pie analogy. I don't want you to be thinking of your application as a checklist. I want you to be thinking about it like an apple pie. Here's what I mean by that. So let's say you come into my office and we have a great conversation and I make a really good apple pie. So let's say I have some in my office and I offer you a slice. I'm like, hey, would you like a slice of my apple pie? And you're like, sure. So you start eating and you're like, oh my goodness, this is really, really good. Not only is Beth fun and supportive, she really makes a really good apple pie. If I offer you a second slice, and let's say the slice is way too soggy, has barely any apples in it, and I don't know, it has way too much nutmeg or cinnamon in it, you're just like, huh. And you're confused, like, why is this part of the same apple pie? That's what you don't want them to think about when it comes to your application for medical school. You don't want them to be like, huh, I'm confused on why this person has applied to medical school. So if you're meeting with, faculty members or staff members, we might be giving different advice for different people because we want them to build up their best apple pie. What I mean by that is if I have a student that comes in who has a 4.0 GPA, but has never shadowed before and passes out when they see blood, it probably is not a good idea to say, hey, let's take more classes, right? We're not going to build up that slice of the apple pie. We're going to be looking at the holistic element of the pie and working on the area for shadowing. On the flip side, if I have a student who has tons of volunteering experience, but maybe doesn't have all the prereqs or the GPA that they're aiming for, it might be one of the things that we might need to focus on their academics. So when you think about your apple pie, I just want you to do just that. Think about yours, not going back to that iceberg analogy and worrying about everybody else. The more you focus on yours, I promise the more it's going to be successful. So what are those things that make up that apple pie? Well, they're going to be looking at your GPA, your science GPA, MCAT score, community involvement and leadership, exposure to the medical field, research, letters of recommendation, and personal statement. All of these are important. And again, some people might have a strong area on one side compared to the other. And they don't want just one strong apple pie slice. They want that whole pie. And so again, you want to be able to explain the why you chose to do something. If someone says, hey, I noticed that you got involved in this organization, can I ask why? And you're like, well, I met with Beth, my pre-med advisor, and she said I should do that. Yeah, that's not going to be what they're looking for when it comes to the medical interviews. You have to have the why. Why did you choose that organization? Why was it important for you to get involved in this type of research? Tell me about this particular class that you took and why you took that in addition to the other prereqs you did. So that's the point. We want to make sure that you can think analytically, that you're thinking like a doctor. And that's why we help prepare you for this particular element. It's not just a checklist. It's you showing that you can think analytically and help make health decisions for someone else. So let's talk about general preregs. So if you're going to medical school, there are going to be classes that are going to be required for students to take to be able to apply to medical school. It makes sense, right? I want my doctor to have a really strong background in physics and chemistry on those particular elements. Now, each medical school is going to be slightly different of what they have for preregs. So that's what's great about meeting with us as a pre-med advisor. We can work with you and kind of talk about what schools you're looking at to help you kind of navigate what that is. But in general, most medical schools are looking at 2 semesters of physics, 2 semesters of biology, 4 semesters of chemistry, including organic chemistry and biochemistry, and 2 semesters of English. Now, ideally, you're hoping to get those classes done before the end of your junior year, because that's when you're going to take the MCAT. I would not recommend taking the MCAT unless you've completed biochem. A good portion of the MCAT, the CAR section, is really, in essence, what biochem is preparing you for. In addition to those particular classes, we might also encourage you to take statistics, psychology, and sociology, because there's going to be portions of that on the MCAT as well. So again, if based on your major, you can actually major in anything and go on to medical school. But let's say I'm talking with someone who is an engineering major. Well, they're automatically going to have physics built into their curriculum to graduate from their undergraduate degree. So it might be one of those things where we might add additional biology classes, maybe additional more psychology classes, kind of elements that might be adding to that apple pie or that particular element in that slice. And the flip side, I might get a student who is majoring in chemistry, right? Well, yeah, that's great. That's going to fit those particular elements that they have in terms of those 4 semesters. So maybe we're also looking again to add those physics, statistics, etc. Again, you can major in anything and go on to medical school. It's just making sure that you have those prereqs. I've had students major in dance, English, agriculture, business, you name it, sky's the limit. My younger sister's an optometrist, and we always joked when she was an undergrad, she couldn't just major in eyeballs, right? So that's what they're looking for. They're looking for you to have that well-rounded elements in terms of the science foundation, both the soft science and the hard sciences, to be prepared to go to medical school. Entrance exams. So the lovely MCAT is one of those things where I get a lot of students that might have test anxiety or just kind of confused on why they have it as part of it. To be honest with you, they don't do it to be mean. They're doing it because they want to have you prepared. Can you think independently and prepare for an exam? No matter what pre-professional area you go into, you're going to have to take exams at your finish of that to be qualified for that particular industry. So when you think about medicine, it's completing boards. I want you to think about the MCAT as if you're thinking about training for a marathon. This is what I mean by that. I could probably run a mile today. Sure, great, but not going to happen for me to run 26. And it doesn't mean I can't. It just means I haven't prepared my legs well enough to be able to have the endurance to do those 26 miles. Your brain is the same concept. Your brain's a muscle. And so you're really talented and smart. You're going to be able to take an exam here or there. Maybe you say, hey, I'm studying for an exam and it's 2 hours and then another one afterwards. But when you think about the MCAT, that's a long test. And you want your brain to be just as strong at the beginning of that test that you are at the end. So when you're thinking about preparing for practice exams, you want to make sure that you have the endurance for it. So the more that you can actually practice those exams and that type of thing is going to help build up that kind of stamina. Again, I know many students can do really well with one exam, maybe two, right, during exam week. But you got to be able to think about the idea that you're combining all of those in one day. Letters of recommendation. So I can't lie to you, I'm a huge fan of Parks and Recreation. I love the interaction of Leslie and Ron. I think many times we think if we get letters of recommendation from somebody that we know everything about them. And the truth be told, maybe, maybe not. But that's not what you're really looking for when it comes to having someone write you a letter of recommendation. Most medical schools are going to want minimum of 2 letters of recommendation from faculty members. Some cases it could be 2 from science. In some cases it might be 1 from a science and 1 of non-science. Again, that's where we come in to help you out in terms of letters of recommendation. So when you think about the idea that you're meeting and chatting with faculty members, you're going to get the idea that you may not know their favorite color, but that's not what they're writing about. They're writing about the idea of how you performed in a class. Yes, I can see on your transcript that you got an A, but that doesn't tell me how you interacted with everybody. So when you think about Leslie and Ron, there's going to be times where they had a relationship, but Ron maybe not showed his feelings, right, in terms of different areas. But he was really good at observing what Leslie was doing, and Leslie vice versa. So when you think about different areas for it, that doesn't mean just because you don't know your professor's favorite color that they don't have a chance to write you a good letter of recommendation because of how you performed in the class. Now, having said that, the more you are involved in that class, participate, and engage, the more they have more to talk about. So there's different ways to do that. Going to office hours, making sure if you are doing classes that you're sitting in the front of the class, if you're on Zoom, that you're paying attention, that you have your camera on, that you ask questions. So those are things that they're going to be thinking about and remembering in terms of engagement, right? And how is that important is because that tells me how you're going to probably engage in future classes. So next step that we want to talk about is personal statements. Many times I get people that come in and are like, I don't have this magical moving moment of what my personal statement should be of when I wanted to be a doctor. Your personal statements are not you talking about wrestling an alligator or climbing Mount Everest. Personal statements are just that, it's personal. And so many times I get students that look online being like, oh, this is what it said online of what I'm supposed to write about, which isn't bad to gather information, but it's kind of similar as a patient that looks online and comes up to the doc and says, doc, I'm dying. I read it on WebMD that I have this, this, and this, which could be the case, but that's usually extreme elements. So one of the tips I get for people when it comes to personal statements is it's really kind of the essence or the glue that lets them know why you did all these activities, why you took these particular classes, what your motivation is, what your interest is, why your MCAT, is the score it is. So it is really kind of combining all of that together. Some people write about maybe a story related to their family. Sometimes they write elements in terms of where they grew up. Other times I get people that write about a cause that they've seen and worked with or volunteering. The reality is it's not the idea that you look and see what everybody else writes. It's more the idea of what is more important to you that you want them to know. One tip I give is what I call word dumping. So maybe you spend a day just randomly brainstorming and you just have an open-ended, notebook, and you just start writing ideas down of things. And, sometimes I have people write stories about a dress that was really important. I've had another person write, a story about a significant moment for their family, in terms of different areas. But again, it doesn't have to be you climbing Mount Everest or wrestling an alligator. That's not what they're looking for. They want to know in terms of the idea of why all this stuff matters to you. So let's take a look at the general timeline. I'll be honest, this is the general timeline when we don't have COVID. So COVID has changed a little bit, if that makes sense, in terms of timeline and different resources. But this is roughly what happens typically for every year. And so we're going to go over that and kind of talk about the different elements that you see. So when you first think about it, this really is going to be the year prior for you starting. So if a student is looking to graduate and start the fall after they've graduated, they'll be doing all of this their junior year in school. So you're looking to take the MCAT anytime between January and May. I get a lot of students that take it usually in April and May, and it makes sense, right? You completed that final semester, maybe of your prereqs, and preparing you for that particular area. I can't lie to you, your spring semester, your junior year, is going to be a lot of studying for the MCAT. That's a lot of prep that you have. The application for the MCAT is very similar to the Common App. And what that means is that you would go in line to AMCAS system, create a profile, complete all the application elements that you need, and then submit what schools you want your application to go to. So if you did the Common App as an undergrad to apply to the University of Kentucky or other schools, it's kind of that same kind of concept. So it opens up in May for you to start working on your application, and then it opens up in June for you to actually submit your application. Once you actually submit your application through AMCAS system, then what you're going to do is actually select what schools that you want your applications to go to. Then those schools will send what we call secondaries. Those secondary applications are usually information on why you want to attend that school specifically, not just, hey, why I want to be a doctor. From there, you're invited for interviews. And then from there, usually you'll start getting information on a rolling basis on acceptance. If you apply early decision to a school, that means that's the only medical school that you want to attend. We can talk more in depth if you have questions about early decision or the rolling admissions process. Now, this is a rough timeline. I've had students interview as late as February or even March and still get accepted. So it just kind of depends on the schools and kind of the areas that they're talking about. This year, the schools are roughly on the same timeline. However, most of it's done all remotely. So interviews are actually going to be done via Zoom or Microsoft Teams, Skype, a variety of different ways within that. So just kind of know that slightly things have changed just because of COVID, but this is the traditional element in terms of the timeline, and that doesn't really change much from year to year. So how does the actual AMCAS system work? So the first thing that you do, like I said, it's very similar to the Common App, kind of analogy when you applied for undergrad. So application then is submitted into AMCAS. You want to make sure that you submit all transcripts from every single school that you received college credit for. What will happen is you'll pay those fees for that particular program, and there is resources if you need assistance when it comes to payment fees on that particular element. Then from there, the applications then for the transcripts will be sent into AMCAS from your school. So you don't touch the transcripts whatsoever. You would have the University of Kentucky, for example, send them into AMCAS. AMCAS will then verify all the work and information that you've actually done. That is what we call our verification process. That usually takes about 2 weeks. So that's why people want to really get your application in earlier, because if it's not verified, then it's going to take longer for them to actually send to the schools, and then for them longer to review to then send to your secondaries. AMCAS will distribute to the different schools that you're looking for, and then each of the letters that you are looking for medical school, for the letters of rec, AMCAS will deliver them as well. So what I mean, again, no contamination. So if you have someone writing you a letter of recommendation, you will not upload that. You actually will send them a link that will give you the idea of who you are, and then that particular letter of recommendation will actually go inside to AMCAS system and upload that letter. You can put different letters in. However, I wouldn't recommend that you send more than what the school is asking for, because it's kind of the idea of, can you follow the directions and find who they're looking for. The reason why they allow you to upload different letters is because you might be applying to different schools that are needing different types of letters. For example, one might want 2 from science professors, and another school may only want 1 from a science professor, and then you need 1 from a non-science professor. So let's talk about the MCAT. The MCAT is, like I said, going to be a test. That's the entrance exam for medical school. Score ranges roughly that you can get range from 472 to 528. The midpoint is roughly around a 500. Most medical schools are going to have that as a higher point, so you can actually see the ranges of what they're looking for. So some, for example, may have it where their midpoint is, I don't know, a 506. Other schools, depending on how competitive they are, might be a 513. So those are things to kind of know about kind of the schools that you're looking for and the ranges that they're looking for as well. On AMCAS, you can actually go and see the different elements of what schools are kind of the ranges are, and that helps you kind of potentially decide schools that you might be interested in applying for. This year, when it came to the MCAT, prior to May and April, because of COVID, they actually have made it where they're doing multiple times a day for testing. So in the past, it'd be everybody started at the same time, and you would go in because you didn't have to social distance. Now what they've done is actually taken out portions of the test that were practice areas or ones that they were testing out questions and reduced the time frame. The content has not changed in terms of information that you need to know. You're still going to get tested over psychology and sociology, and that's why we definitely think that's helpful to take those classes if you can. You're going to get what we call the, physical elements and that type of thing of chemistry, physics are some examples on those particular ones. And then the CAR section is the critical analysis reading skills part. That's where you're going to read passages and have to make choices of which one is the best option. So I wanted to kind of throw this out for pre-health. This is average scores for all of them, because sometimes I get students that are like, absolutely, I want medical school. And then they might start talking about, no, maybe my interest is more pharmacy or PA or PT. So it kind of helps understand what they're looking for those application ranges. So when you think about medical school, roughly nationwide, and again, some schools are going to be higher and some are going to be lower, you're roughly looking at about a 3.7 and an MCAT score of a 5.08. Again, schools are going to be higher or lower depending on a variety of things, but that's kind of a rough idea. So traditional MD schools that you think of, that's going to be the orthopathic. When you think about a DO school, those might be a little bit lower when it comes to GPA and MCAT because they look more holistically at the person, because that's the style that you're going to have when it comes to the classes. You can also see what that looks like for other medical areas, because again, I get a variety of students that think one thing and then they start discovering and exploring maybe that freshman year and being like, wow, I didn't know that they had all these opportunities in the field of healthcare. And so that's what's so great about it, is that it's okay if you kind of shift and change your mind, but I wanted to make sure you had the information. So what are resources available for you as a University of Kentucky student? The first one is what we want to call the Summer Medical Observership Program. This happens during the summertime. It's a partnership with the Stuckert Career Center and the College of Medicine. We partner and actually have you connect with a doctor where you actually will shadow with them roughly about 20 to 30 hours over the summertime. Applications open up in January, and you'll see them on our website as well as in Handshake. Early Assurance Program. If you are interested in going to the University of Kentucky Medical School, and that's the only school that you really want to go to for medical school, then we have a program through the Honors College called Early Assurance Program. If you're currently not an honors student, that is okay. You can actually apply to be part of the Honors College to actually apply for this particular program. Why I put OLE here is that many students ask about shadowing and elements to work with the University of Kentucky Hospital. We have a program called Observation and Learning Experience. So you actually have to go through and make sure you have all your immunizations, different checklists with the different elements to be able to shadow and actually observe in the hospital. OLE is that process, and I'm happy to talk with people individually about that. Now, if you're shadowing at different hospitals or maybe back home, please know that their application might be a little bit different and their process might be a little bit different. We have the Interprofessional Test Program. This was started about 2 years ago as a pilot program designed for students who needed assistance when it comes to prepping for the DAT, which is for dental school, OAT, which is for optometry, and of course the MCAT for medical school. The commitment is that students would meet every Saturday in the spring semester, and it was the low cost of only $100 to be part of it. We're hoping to have that for 2021, but more to come on that one. Applications usually open in November if we're able to have that in terms of funding. And then finally, undergraduate research. If you go onto the website for undergraduate research here at the University of Kentucky, you will see all the research that's happening by our faculty members. Please note, each of these resources are still available even with COVID-19, but they might be changed or a little bit different. Summer Medical Observership Program, unfortunately, we had to change because of COVID and the fact that there's no volunteers being added or shadowing right now at UK Hospital. Same with OLE. So there's different ones within that's been affected because of it, but that doesn't mean us as academic advisors and pre-professional advisors can help you in terms of figuring out what's best for you and programs that are out there that might assist you. So final tips and information that I want to give to you on that particular element. What's helpful sometimes for people is visualizing it. So create a Google Doc that actually talks about kind of the schools that you want to go to. So you can start visualizing what that GPA range is, maybe kind of the MCAT score that they're looking for, or maybe that particular school really wants people that are tied to that state. That is Kentucky. So they're really going to look for people who are residents or have a really strong tie to the state of Kentucky. Talk over what your why is. I can't stress this enough that they don't want to hear that you just want to help people. Yes, that's important. Yes, doctors do help people, but it's got to be deeper than that because lawyers help people, accountants help people, teachers help people. So they want to know why it is that you want to help people in the terms of being a doctor or what that looks like for you. I know financial elements can be tough for people because it is a cost to apply to each of these schools. So sometimes it might be helpful to kind of know how many schools you're looking to apply to. On average, most people apply for roughly between 8 to 10 schools. Some people are more than that, some people are less than that. It's not right or wrong, it goes back to that person's apple pie. Maybe for geographic reasons, they're only able to apply to 2 or 3 schools because they need to be in a geographic area because of family. Other times they get students that, like, nope, I'm willing to go here, I want to move here, which is great, but then we have to work on making sure we have a tie to that particular school or state. And finally, I can't stress enough that GPA. We're very much doers and we want to be very involved in other people's lives and help them out, which is admirable and great, but it's really important to make sure you have that strong GPA. So some general information, we have 2 medical schools in the state of Kentucky, the University of Kentucky, of course, and the University of Louisville. Those are our MD schools. We also have a DO school, which is the University of Pikeville. You are welcome to apply to all 3, 1, or maybe look for schools from your home state, whatever your goal is. Again, we're here to assist those and help to make your apple pie the best possible. So finally, we're located in the Stuckert Career Center, which is right across from the Singletary Center. We have our hours from 8 until 5. We do in-person appointments as well as Zoom appointments. Most students right now are doing Zoom appointments, especially if you're applying and practicing for medical school interviews, because that's what most of them are going to be. If you are an underclassman, we're happy to meet with you, kind of talk over your goals, kind of develop a plan, and just say hello. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any additional questions, you're welcome to email us to the Stuckert Career Center, or you can actually make an appointment with one of us advisors. Again, I'm Beth, and this is one of my passions. I love helping students go on to pre-professional areas, especially medical school. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining us for our webinar.